Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today I'll be talking to Teonna Woolford. She's based out in Maryland, USA. And we'll be talking about challenges of living with sickle cell. She's a sickle cell advocate after suffering numerous challenges of growing up with sickle cell, especially when she was a teenager. She realized that the challenges of sickle cell mostly stem from people not knowing about how to deal with issues of sickle cell, the unknown, the unpredictability of sickle cell. Many people have sickle cell are so afraid to talk about it or to even show when they're in pain because they're scared of what others might think. When people think of sickle cell, we always think pain, 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 but there is so much other issues affecting pain, such as we have issues around our mental health, we have issues around anxiety, depression, dealing with the drugs, aftermath of the drugs of dealing with sickle cell. Who is Teonna? Teonna is a warrior advocate. She's the CEO of the Cell Reproductive Health Education, which is an interest of hers because she started this um, working at this place because she really thought one of the key issues and that people find challenging is the reproductive side of people with chronic illness, especially if you're going for stem transplant. What are the damages it does to you, and how do you help people who've gone through that challenges? She works with pharmaceutical on getting awareness about the drugs that people with sickle cell and our other chronic illness might be taking. She's a motivational speaker and she does community engagement. I'm super excited to meet Teonna to talk about all these critical issues affecting people with the sickle cell genetic blood disorder. And hopefully you get to understand why we are so passionate and why I am so passionate, especially a sickle cell sufferer myself, about sickle cell. Meet Fiona. Welcome everyone again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in the introduction, I'm talking to a fellow sickle cell warrior, which always gives me great joy. And Teonna is based in USA. Teonna, where are you joining us from in USA?
Maryland.
Maryland. Okay, I haven't been to Maryland yet. How is it? How is it with the pandemic and everything going on?
Our cases are rising and the governor is trying to open schools back up, and there's new variants here and it's kind of crazy. It's also snowing up a storm here too.
Oh, really? Oh gosh. It was not. It snowed here, just a little bit, less than 3 inch, 3 inches snow. So tiny, but I managed to get the kids out to enjoy it a little bit. And
That's good.
they loved it, but they were like, I wish it was a much bigger snow than this, but that's life. Tiana, I'm so glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule to join us on this conversation. I really wanted to understand a little bit about sickle cell from your perspective and how you've managed to overcome it. And also, not just that, you also do advocacy work for sickle cell, which is such an amazing thing because the more we talk about it, the more people know about it, and the more our cure and treatment in hospitals tend to get better. Before we go
Mhm.
into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about who is this beautiful Tiana?
Okay, well, I am 29 years old, so this is my big year. I'm turning 30 in July.
July.
Um,
Oh, you're July.
yes,
When in July? Like I'm July 6th, so we
the
might.
10th.
Oh, we're both Cancer, so that's good.
Super emotional, super sensitive. But I am, goodness, I really am a full-time sickle cell advocate. I have three younger siblings. I'm super family oriented, huge family, huge close-knit family. Um, I have an incredible support system. I think that's a part of who I am. I've always had amazing mentors around me, an amazing church family around me. And really, I just spend all my time advocating for sickle cell.
Wow, that's really amazing. So, when you first diagnosed with sickle cell, when did your parents realize that you were a special child?
Well, it's so interesting because my mother had actually been studying sickle cell disease since she was in the fifth grade. And when she was in nursing school, she did a dissertation on sickle cell. But like so many of us, my mother knew that she had trait, but my father was adamant that he didn't have it. So she was pretty surprised to find out that she had a child with sickle cell, but at least she wasn't super overwhelmed because she was already somewhat familiar with the disease. Um, I think that I say she was like somewhat familiar, but truth be told, what you're taught in nursing school about sickle cell does not begin to cover the possibilities or the realities of this disease. And I think we were somewhat prepared that I would probably deal with a lot of VOCs, pain crisis, but that's the thing about sickle cell. I think it's sometimes underestimated and people don't realize like it can affect every organ, every vessel. And even for people who aren't in pain, you never know, like they could have a stroke, there could be organ damage. So I think that is something as a family that we probably underestimated sickle cell. And I did okay as a child, but then when I hit puberty, things kind of spiraled out of control.
Yeah, I think that's most people. Some people do better when they're younger, and some people when they get to that teenage age, it just really gets really bad. I know my
Mhm.
at my teenage age is really when I got it absolutely the worst. So when your parents found out that you were this sickle cell, you had sickle cell, what did they immediately think, and did they have to do anything special to look after you?
Yeah, I remember. So my mom was actually a single mother, but we always had the support of my grandparents and my uncle. So we were all very close knit. And they always wanted to make sure that I was never raised to use sickle cell as a crutch. Like they were like, you can do anything that anyone else can do, you just may have to make adjustments. And like with the snowfall, it brought me back to when I was a child. We knew that cold weather could be a trigger for crisis, but my family never wanted me to feel left out. So my grandmother would like literally go outside and take pots and like put snow in pots and bring it in the kitchen so that I could play in snow, but not have to be outside in the cold. So I've learned from a very early age how to be flexible and how to like make this disease fit my lifestyle, honestly.
Oh, that's a good thing they did though, that yeah, you have sickle cell, but it's not something that okay, because you have sickle cell, we're not going to let you try this, we're not going to do this. We
Right.
want you to explore and see how far you could go with things. The first day you had a crisis, were probably in school or in a public place. How did it happen? And can you remember the feeling of not being in control of your health and having to rely on someone else to take you to hospital? How was that?
Yeah, so I mean, as a child, I had like pneumonia, acute chest, splenic sequestration, but my real like vivid memory, I was in fifth grade and we were on a field trip and it was either late fall, early winter. It was pretty cold. And we had no idea as a family that the majority of the trip was going to be spent outside, or else I may have set that one out, but literally was in the cold for like 8 hours. And honestly, I went to a predominantly white school and they were unapologetic and wanted me to know that they knew nothing about sickle cell and really did not want to take the time to understand about sickle cell. Like they would say things to me like, well, it'd just be easier if you had cancer because then at least we know when you were going to miss time for treatment, but this is so unpredictable and we don't know how to help you. So, like a lot of children that age, I wanted to fit in and I wanted to be normal. So I remember getting back on that school bus and just this debilitating pain, and I didn't want anyone to know though. So I'm like hunched over and people are like making jokes. I'm trying to like fake laugh. But I was in so much pain. And I remember waiting when we finally got back to school. I remember waiting for all the kids to get off of the school bus so that I could like limp off the bus alone and nobody would see me and just go straight. I remember going straight to the emergency room. And as a family, we were just like, wow. we may have to do things differently from now on because we really just were not prepared for that type of trip. We didn't ask the right questions going in.
Mm.
And I think that was really my first time. And I thought I was doing a good job covering it up, but I wasn't. And I had to deal with all these questions about what was happening with me. And that's really what kind of prepared me to start advocating for myself.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think, I'm thinking about that, and I can imagine how much pain you must have been in, and how you, because of, when we talk, and because we look well as well, it's a big problem for people. And it's not predictable. Sickle cell is not something
Right.
we can predict. We can't say, oh, you know what, I have to go for treatment. I know the pain is coming. It's sometimes
Exactly.
it comes out of nowhere, and it's just so embarrassing, especially when you're much younger, because people never understand. Especially, and I say to people, I think it's worse when you don't say anything to people, because then people make assumption about you, that why are you acting this way. Have you ever got that feeling from anyone where people make and like assume that you should be doing this, but all of a sudden you can't do it? Have you ever had that feeling before?
Yes, especially as an adult, because what I find is like I've learned how to kind of push through the pain, but it's the fatigue that really knocks me on my feet.
Mm.
And so if I'm in bed for like 3 extra hours than normal, it's like, why aren't you up yet? Or you're just being lazy today. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with that. My cells are breaking down. I'm anemic. But what I have found, I know that we still deal with this. There's like such a stigma around having sickle cell, even in year 2021. And I know there are a lot of warriors who don't even want people to know. But what I've found is that being vulnerable and transparent about what I go through, not only do I learn a lot about myself, but I learn a lot about others. And sometimes when you close off and you don't give people an opportunity to be gracious to you, you've made a judgment about other people. Because what I find more so is that I do get understanding.
Mm. That's true. That's true. So tell me, you said your teenage years were the hardest bit. Why would you describe it as your hardest bit? Was it because you were now, mommy was no longer monitoring your lifestyle, and you were now more fully in control, and you started to explore things that you shouldn't really go within that limit because of your sickle cell? Or was because that you were growing older and your body was just changing? Where do you think that lied?
It was a combination, but it started off with just the fact that my disease had progressed in a way I was not prepared for. I became transfusion dependent, and then I ended up having transfusion reactions, one that sent me into liver failure. By the time I was 15, I had to have both of my hips replaced. So it was a lot of physical issues. I was infection after infection. And then that physical really, it's a vicious cycle because then it impacts your mental health. So I remember like my senior year of high school, I had missed 60% of that school year and having to go and make up work just so that I could graduate on time. I mean, those were some really difficult years. And then those that like high school especially, because that's when you're planning the rest of your life out and you're applying to colleges. And just the life that I saw for myself wasn't realistic at the time because my body was constantly failing me. And I grew up, I mean, my family is incredible. I come from a very rich legacy, and everyone in this family is so ambitious. And it's so hard to reconcile having these huge dreams and feeling like you can't accomplish them because you're stuck in a hospital.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what made me decide to have a bone marrow transplant.
So now you are advocate for sickle cell. You're the CEO at the Sickle Cell Reproductive Health Education Center. You are
Yeah.
also a pharmacologist consultant, where you work with pharmacologists and pharmacists and tell to work with them. How did all this transpire from being this girl who was always sick and now blossoming into a lovely lady? How did you find your joy? What gave you that drive to become the person you are today?
You know, I had my bone marrow transplant, and I really saw firsthand how sickle cell warriors were treated versus cancer patients because I was on an oncology wing, and just the VIP treatment that you experience on an oncology center and a cancer center compared to the treatment that you get as a sickle cell warrior, it just stirred up something in me, whereas like I have to get out more and I have to talk about this. And I remember going to like a conference at NIH, and hopefully they're okay with me saying this. They did a panel on bone marrow transplants, and everyone up there was like a success story. And I was like, this is not right. Like, if you want to have honest conversations about these curative therapies, you need to hear every side. And people need to know that it's not like a walk in the park. And seriously, all I did was share my story at one conference, and then God just opened up so many other doors. And I was speaking at all these conferences across the country. And then um, I just got tired of talking and feeling like I wasn't doing anything to really affect change action wise. And that's what led me to start consulting with the pharmaceutical companies, because it's like you can't design a clinical trial for sickle cell warriors without having sickle cell warriors at the table telling you how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And I just started identifying gaps and needs in the community that weren't being met, and I just made it my business to do what I could to meet those needs.
Wow. Wow. I'm so happy you did that because it's very true. There's lots of drugs being produced, and sometimes there's not enough research, or the people who are really highly affected by those will be using those drugs don't have a say. And why make something if they haven't made said how their body is reacting to that drug? So I really applaud you for doing that. And how has that helped you from what you've done? How has that given back to the community? How have you seen a difference in people's reaction and people getting, feeling that the sickle cell community is getting more heard?
I think one first it by other warriors getting out there sharing their story and advocating, it just raises awareness. Like I said, a lot of people think that this is just a disease about pain, when really we need to have conversations about fatigue, chronic pain, organ damage, stroke. So just increasing understanding and awareness and being able to educate people. And then as far as the warriors, I think what I see a lot, especially for the adult warriors, is this habit where you fall into isolation and depression. But I think when you see somebody else who's really able to understand where you are and have empathy for you, it kind of empowers you to want to share your story. And like I just got a text from someone this morning who was thanking me for putting her in touch with the pharmaceutical company, because now they have a relationship with her nonprofit organization. So I'm really passionate about community engagement, and all I really want to do is make sure that by the time I leave this earth, the quality of life for warriors is better. And I don't even really have a plan. I'm just kind of winging it, and God is faithful, so it's been working out.
And what's your hope for the future? Final question. What's your hope for people living with sickle cell anemia?
Um, I mean, I think it's easy for me to get up and say that I would love to see a universal cure.
Yeah.
But as far as really, my hope is that we have such amazing doctors who understand what we're going through, and that we have such amazing disease modifying treatments that you don't necessarily even need to go through a harsh curative therapy process, because you'll really start to be able to just take a pill every day that will prevent organ damage. And I know that that's probably far fetched, but that's my thing, is just that we will have better management and better quality of lives, and that also that sickle cell will become a household name and everybody will know what it is.
Wow. Wow, Teonna, I'm so delighted that you took this time out to explain a little bit about, your work and your own struggles with sickle cell. And I hope by leaving this message that more people who watch this will understand the seriousness of sickle cell, and we keep spreading our words. And I applaud you. Keep doing what you're doing, because you might not feel like making an impact. I found you, so obviously the rest of the world is finding you. So keep shining and keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for joining this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.